All right, let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. The combine has wrapped up, or it is wrapping up, depending on when you're watching this video, and all eyes are now focused towards free agency for the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, big question marks remain with the T. Higgins situation, Jamar Chase's extension. Who knows? Maybe by the time you're watching it, those things have been worked out. Very fluid environment. But outside of that, the Bengals do have very serious needs. They have the quarterback lockdown. Hendrickson's an all-pro, of course. Jamar Chase is one of the top two receivers in football. So they have the infrastructure in place. They just need to address some of these critical needs. The good news is they got the cap space to do it. $61.5 million according to overthecap.com. That's a good chunk of change. Obviously, that's very, very fluid. If they lock down Higgins and they extend Jamar Chase, that number will adjust probably negatively against them, but that's still a lot of dollars they'll have available. Now, what that means is the Bengals have to be strategic, right? They got a number of big needs they need to address. They can't throw all their dollars at one basket. And I think we're going to start with the biggest position of need for the Bengals, and that's offensive guard. It's been a big thing here. And let's start with the first candidate that we think is a great fit for Cincinnati. We're talking about Brandon Scherff, offensive lineman. If you throw up an image of him, Miles, then we'll shift over to the numbers in just a second. Scherff is a guy, obviously, currently, or last season was with the Jacksonville Jaguars, spent some time with Washington. Pro Bowler guy, pros pro, right? He's been around the block. He's a veteran looking to finally compete for a title. If you flip over to the numbers there, you can see he's 34 years old. He's got a valuation of $10 million. His PFF grades there aren't spectacular, but he kind of was left on an island there with Jacksonville. So I wouldn't worry so much about the PFF grades. And to be honest, if you look at Bengals guys, they're a dumpster fire. So even then, those numbers, even though they're not like elite level PFF grades, are much better than what Cincinnati's put forward. And I think Scherff's a guy that you can get at a discount because he's looking to win a title. He knows he's at the end of his career. He's not going to get the mega deal a guy like Trey Smith for the Chiefs is going to get. He's going to have to look at a team that's willing to pay him at least fair price, maybe a little bit of a discount if he wants to ring chase. And I think the Bengals will be able to do just that. And Miles, we'll go into our second offensive guard. Then I'll throw it over to you to get your thoughts on these two guys. And that's Kevin Zeitler, right? This is a guy most recently from the Detroit Lions. He's same age, 35 years old. Let's go and switch over to the numbers. Just jump right into it. Everyone knows what Zeitler looks like. And if you don't, you probably don't even really care. But his valuation is 10.5 million bucks. His PFF grades are off the charts. But again, the Lions, right? They run a very offensive line friendly scheme. He's a good player, right? But I think the difference between performance in Scherff and Zeitler isn't as big as his PFF grades would tend to indicate. So I think they could get both these guys, Scherff and Zeitler, on a little bit of that valuation discount because they want to ring chase. Scherff specifically hasn't been on a whole lot of winning teams. Zeitler spent some time with Detroit recently. He's looking to make a run to a Super Bowl. They failed to do that. I think both these guys would be perfect candidates for the Bengals going forward at offensive guard. And again, you need a veteran, right? I don't want no young guy. I don't want no guy trying to just, make his money there with Cincinnati, an up and comer. You need to solve this problem now. You need someone that Bro can trust. I think these two guys are one of them, maybe even both of them, depending on how cheap of the discount they're willing to take, would be perfect fits for Cincinnati at this biggest position of need. Miles, I'm done with my thoughts on this. Let me throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on the offensive guard fits for Cincinnati and specifically these two guys?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is really interesting, these two guys, because you bring in two guys that are, you know, a little bit different. I'd to say that Zeitler, he's older, but he's more, seasoned. He's got a lot of, stuff going on for him as far as he's been around the block. He knows how to do. He's been with multiple different teams, and he's able to morph very well. He's able to move from a team and very quickly be a contributor. Did great in Baltimore, moved over, did great with the Lions as well. So I think Zeitler is good, but he's got the age there. But I think with the age, you get some discount, like you said. That's a smart play by the Bengals to get a guy like that. Then on the other side of things, I think you look at what a guy like Scherff brings to the table. I think that a little bit younger, a guy he's still 33, so not like much younger we're talking about here, but still great player. I think he had some injury concerns early on in his career, maybe help bring down the value for him as far as getting him at a better deal. But coming into Jaguar, he's been pretty solid. Both these guys are great pass blockers as well. And I think when you look at the Bengals, when you look at what they've done, you're in a really great situation here. And it's probably not that, common where it doesn't really matter if they're a good pass blocker or if they're a good run blocker because the Bengals sucked at both last year. They were equally bad. They were 29th in the NFL in pass blocking. They were also 29th in the NFL at run blocking. They just couldn't do anything right when it came to offensive line, when it came to how they block things. So I think both of these guys are good. And like you said, there's a lot of dollars to be allocated on the Bengals side. You got Jamar Chase. You've got what if you decide to do something with T. Higgins? Do you keep him on the franchise tag? Do you make a contract extension, which is going to be a lot of money? Do you go out and get some of your top tier defensive linemen and bringing them back as well? I think there's a lot of money that needs to be allocated on this team. So when you can save money, and this is a win now type of mode for the Bengals, this is a team that is ready to go out and attack and win and be aggressive. When you are in that spot, I think getting a good value for an older player that can bring instant impact to your team, both of these guys seem smart moves to me, Nick. And it's like you said, maybe both of them, if you can get it for the right price, I don't think that you can bring in too many offensive linemen to this team. I think both these guys are valuable options. And if I'm the Bengal, I'm seriously considering potentially bringing in both of these guys and maybe getting someone in the draft as well.
Yeah, because it's one of those things, right? Everyone wants to go for the big name guy, but it's hyper competitive, right? Everyone's talking about like Trey Smith for Kansas City, even though he's locked up as a franchise tag. I'm sure the Chiefs would be willing to trade him. They did that with L'Jarius Sneed last year. Everyone wants the big name guy, the big dollar guy, but you have to be realistic, right? You have to understand what is out there that you can afford to address all your needs, right? Because this Bengals team isn't perfect, right? It's not like, well, if we go out and just get one great guard, we're suddenly going to win a Super Bowl. They've got other flaws, right? And they were disastrous on the offensive line last year. The numbers you brought up, I didn't know they were quite that bad. I knew they were bad, but I didn't know 29th in both categories. That's pretty shocking, to be honest with you. Credit to Joe Burrow, the season he had with those kind of issues. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. But I think defensively is where we got to turn to next. And look, we obviously know the Bengals, they let Reader go last offseason. They brought in Rankins. That didn't work. They're moving off of him. We look at a guy like Jenkins, developmental prospect, showed some flashes, but he's got some way to go. And I think there's a guy out there that I personally like as another great fit. Again, we're looking at a win now mode, and that's Puna Ford, right? Ford's an experienced guy. He's been around the block. This is a theme here, right? I know everyone wants the big name guys, but the reality is you win championships with these veterans that come in that have experience and contribute. And Puna Ford is one of these perfect examples. Looking at his valuation, let's go and throw over to his numbers, Miles, if you don't mind. $8.5 million. Again, we're looking at that 10 million and under valuation that gives the Bengals an opportunity. And if Ford wants to ring chase, again, he's 30 years old. He's about 30 years old. This is a great opportunity to do that. Maybe a discount there. Again, this is the approach we're taking. I understand people will sit there and sell you the moon. Oh, the Bengals can, get Kyle Pitts. They can bring in Gesicki. They can give T. Higgins all the money, give Jamar Chase all the money. They can trade for Trey Smith. They can overpay for Osa Odigizua, right? They can do all these things. You can't. You live in a constrained world of the salary cap. You have to be strategic. Puna Ford, he's one of these underrated guys, right? He had an 85 overall PFF grade, great against the run, solid against the pass. He's just a classic, solid, good interior defensive lineman. He's experienced, he's savvy. He fits exactly what Al Golden wants to do, I think, defensively going forward. And I think this is a perfect move. Again, it's not the flashiest move that you've heard of, right? Rankins was probably a bigger name, but I think it's a better quality addition. And Miles, what are your thoughts on Ford? And do you have any other defensive linemen, interior wise, or maybe edge defenders you like the Bengals going after here?
Yeah, Nick, I like Ford because Ford's another guy who he's been around the block. He's 30 years old. He's done some good things at a few different teams now. I think Puna Ford is just a guy when he came over to the Chargers last season, he really did some good stuff. I think he did great in the run defense and he was good at pass rush as well. It wasn't horrible, the 70 grade that we're talking about. I think Puna Ford is somebody that's really interesting here. And I think he's going to be at a reasonable price. Like you said, he's been around the block. He's got a couple paydays now through his career when he's in his 30s. This is a guy, like you said, I think perfect opportunity. Ring chase. Is this a guy that comes in? I think he's going to be a lot cheaper than anyone the Bengals currently have that they're trying to bring back. And if you pair him with somebody interesting, I think that gives you the opportunity. And there's one more guy here that I think is interesting. And I think it's a little bit different than all of the other players we have brought up. And that's a guy like Malcolm Kuntz. Kuntz has been really interesting, I think, for the Raiders. He's had some flashes. He's a lot younger than these other guys, at least 3 to 5, 6, 7 years younger than every other guy that we have mentioned so far. I think Malcolm Kuntz is very interesting, but also what he brings to the table, I think he is good as well. He's got, the PFF grades, they're good. He's been, 66 run defense, but that's not really his game. 78.9 pass rush grade. That's what he is. A little bit smaller on the edge type of guy, but he can get to the quarterback. He can do some really good stuff. And he's got a good valuation because of some injury concerns, things like that, around $9 million under 10, like you said, I think Malcolm Kuntz is a very interesting one, but he's also that long-term type of play. This is a guy you can bring in and maybe kind of put him in for a few years. This is it doesn't have to be a 1-year rental. It doesn't have to be even 2 years. You can sign this guy to a couple-year contract because he's got the age on him. He's 27 years old. He's young enough to bring in and have 3, 4 really solid years with the Bengals for not that much money. So I think this is a future type of piece when you look at a guy like Malcolm Kuntz. I think he's a very interesting prospect. I love Poona Ford too. I think he brings a little bit different. Like I said, if they had the money, I would say they should bring in all 4 of these guys. But I think the Bengals, you got 2 options here. Do you want a solid ring chase guy in Poona Ford to bring into, the defensive line? Or are you looking for more of a future play, a guy that might stick around for a while in Malcolm Kuntz, more of a different style of player, pass rush heavy type of guy? I think there's really good options there for them. But Nick, what do you think about Malcolm Kuntz?
So I'm biased. I'm a big Malcolm Kuntz fan, right? This was a guy who broke out in 2023. Coming into the 2024 season, he was going to be paired with Crosby at the Raiders. They had Christian Wilkins as a defensive tackle. I thought he was going to have a double-digit sack season coming into a huge payday. And unfortunately, he just got hurt, missed the entire year, right? That's why the numbers are what the numbers are. It's all based on 2023 data. That means I think any team that goes after Kuntz here is a steal waiting to happen. I think whoever signs this kid, we're going to have to really dive deep into that because I love Malcolm Kuntz. I think he's going to come in and do great things wherever he goes. I think paired with the Bengals opposite of Hendrickson would be just a godsend, right? They were looking all last season for a pass rusher. Hubbard's not that guy at this point in his career. Hendrickson had an incredible season, but they need someone else opposite him who can take advantage. Hendrickson's going to get the slide protections, the double teams, the chips. How about you get a great speed rusher on the other side? And suddenly this Bengals defense goes from having a lot of issues stopping people to being really good at rushing the passer. And again, that's what Kuntz was really good at. Opposite of Crosby, he got those one-on-one matchups in 2023 and he dominated in them. He had a phenomenal year. Obviously, his stats were really good in the second half of the year as he got more playing time, but really his film and his production and just pass rush win rate, things like that, that kind of just what really contributes to long-term success was off the charts the second half of 2023. And he was going to have a monster 2024 before the injury unfortunately struck. So to me, like you said, the Bengals can take a couple approaches here on D-line. Do they take a really aggressive flyer on Kuntz? Is the injury finally resolved and let him be the great pass rusher opposite of Hendrickson? Or do they go to the steady Eddie route, the consistent guy to help immediate need in Poona Ford? I think, like you said, all 4 of these guys would be great fits. The numbers are real constraints. If I had my say in it, if it mattered, I would sit there and say, hit up Scherf, hit up Kuntz, and let's see what happens in the draft, right? Obviously, hoping you extend Higgins, hoping you get Jamar Chase locked down fine, right? We're going to assume those 2 things. That would be my approach, but it's clear to me these are the 4 best fits that the Bengals have in a realistic world, right? This isn't a dream world, this is reality. And these are the 4 best guys the Bengals hope to get.